Hi, my friends. My name is Rachel.
And I'm Emily. And welcome to Crimes, Conspiracies, and Cocktails. Not a cocktail, but it's coffee.
Yeah, it's coffee this morning. It's still 11:53, so it's not quite noon yet.
We started this at 9.
It's been going for a while.
It's still coffee hour.
Yeah. All right. So we're super excited for you guys to join us today on our first episode. We have been planning this for a really long time. It takes a lot more planning than either of us expected, but
many months.
Yeah, but here we are. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it's going to be a 3-parter. So welcome to the first part of Jack the Ripper and the Whitechapel murders. So the Whitechapel murders are a generic police file that contains 11 names of women that were killed between April 1888 and February 1891 in the East End of London. These names included Emma Elizabeth Smith, Martha Tabron, Mary Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Kelly, Rose Milet, Alice Mackenzie, Frances Coles, and an unidentified woman who is often referred to as the Torso Murder. So of these 11 murders, 5 of them are believed to have been killed by the same man.
Isn't that what they call the canon murders?
Yeah, so these 5 women are actually referred to as the canonical 5 victims of Jack the Ripper, which personally, I don't love that term, but we're going to use it because that's everywhere in all the research and everything. They refer to them as the canonical 5. But we should keep in mind that that's not an absolute number. The general consensus is that he has 5 victims. There's a good chance that he could have as many as 9 or 10 victims, or even as little as 3 or 4. So it's really hard to tell which of the 11 murders were committed by him. But at the time, a lot of those murders were considered to be Jack the Ripper victims. But one thing when you're looking back at the murder sites today, they're all super close together. So to me, it's kind of hard to think that he didn't play a significant part in those 11 murders.
Exactly. It's why would one certain area be focused on by several different people? It would be the same person.
Several different, serial killers, essentially. Or, psychos. But, I will say that area was, super dangerous. And it wasn't a safe time for prostitutes, which all of the women were either known prostitutes or suspected prostitutes. To me, it just seems kind of rare that there would be such a small area with multiple killers. But again,
and also to think about it, there were no cars back then, so he would have to be within walking distance of where he...
In that area, it was very labyrinth-like. The alleys were... It was one big building and then just having an opening where people would walk through. So it would be these narrow, unlit alleyways because they didn't have street lights or anything like that. So everywhere was fucking pitch black. Most of the torches, lights, lampposts, whatever the fuck they'd be called.
Torches. It's also it's Frankenstein times.
Yeah, it was 1888.
Gas lamps. We're gonna say gas lamps at this point.
So they were, most of the lamps were turned out at 11 p.m. So anytime after that, it's a free for all.
Honestly, I wasn't allowed out after dark in rural Stony Creek.
Yeah, so
I can't imagine how the worst area of London would be.
Yeah, it was not safe. Let's just put it that way.
Well, clearly. We wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, if it was
a safe place to
right?
be.
So, yeah. But like I said, not all of the Whitechapel murders were committed by Jack the Ripper, but some were and some might have been. Because of the uncertainty surrounding the victims, we're going to go through the entire timeline. And then you guys can decide for yourself how many of the victims you think were murdered by Jack the Ripper. Before we get into it, I do want to give a little shout out to the website jacktheripper.org, which I got most of my information from. They have a very, very, very detailed timeline, and that's where I got most of my information from. Casebook as well. They were really detailed. Yeah, very detailed. And also that's where any of the pictures that we show today, they're from that website as well. So we are going to start off at the beginning of the timeline. So the first Whitechapel victim was attacked on Tuesday, April 3rd, 1888. And her name was Emma Elizabeth Smith. So Emma was a 45-year-old widow who was staying at a lodging house at 18 George Street. She was what was referred to at the time as an unfortunate. They were basically considered the lowest classes of prostitutes. These women worked on the streets and did their business in alleyways and balconies. And obviously this wasn't safe work. The deputy keeper of the lodging house that she stayed at, Mary Russell, said that Emma had often come home with black eyes that men had given her. Yes. And one night Emma told her that she'd been thrown out of a window. So yeah, it's like,
oh my God,
a very dangerous time. Very, very dangerous time, especially for prostitutes.
Plus, it's a repeated instance.
Yeah, and like
nothing was done about.
And because they're staying at a lodging house, you pay your rent pretty much like daily or weekly, so you have to go out. And I'm pretty sure most of these lodging houses, they're paying daily. So
yeah, basically like a hotel stay.
Yeah, so they have to go out and work every day to get money to sleep that night, unless they want to sleep on the street.
Oh my God, this is just poor woman.
Yeah, it's pretty. Man. It's really, really sad
knowing how it ends.
Mm-hmm. And like many of the women in this case, Emma suffered from alcoholism, which, if I lived her life, I would probably be reaching for the bottle as well.
That would probably be the only way to be able to deal with all that all the time. Right?
But on April 2nd, Mary Russell said that she left the lodging house apparently in good health, which I assume meant that she was sober, or like at least like close to. Nobody really knows what she did that night or where she went, but most assume that she probably went to one of the local pubs in the area. At around 4 or 5 in the morning on April 3rd, Emma returned to the lodging house with incredible injuries. Emma told Mary that she had been attacked and she'd been robbed of all her money. Emma was pretty reluctant to get help, but she was in such bad shape that Mary eventually convinced Emma to go to the hospital. So with the help of 2 fellow lodgers, they made their way to a nearby London hospital on Whitechapel Road, which was an approximately 15-minute walk. And once you hear her injuries, you will be fucking astounded that this woman was able to walk 15 minutes. Like, the fact that she was even able to stand up, let alone walk that far, is
the fact that
incredible.
She was that badly beaten that they wanted to bring her to the hospital after being thrown through a window, all this other stuff that's happened to her. Nobody suggested going to the hospital.
But this time she was like so injured that she had to go.
No way.
But as they walked up Osborne Street, Emma pointed to a spot near Taylor's Cocoa Factory and said that that's where she'd been assaulted. Once they got to the London hospital, Dr. George Haslip, the house surgeon, examined Emma, and he later testified that although she had been drinking, she knew what she was about. And when he examined her, he found that her injuries were like genuinely horrific. So we're going to go through a few of her injuries now. Trigger warning, they are pretty intense. A portion of her right ear was torn. The peritoneum and other internal organs had been ruptured. The peritoneum is what I looked up online, is the tissue that lines your abdominal wall and covers most of the organs in your abdomen.
Oh my God.
So that had been ruptured, as well as some internal organs. When he asked her how she got her injuries, she told him that she was walking past Whitechapel Church around 1:30 a.m. when she saw some men walking towards her. She crossed the road to avoid them, like most
women would do, even today.
Exactly. But these
walking late at night
fucking pieces of garbage ended up following her along Osborne Street, where they assaulted her and robbed her of all her money. She said that there was 2 or 3 of them, and the youngest was no older than 19 years old. The doctor said that she didn't really give many details, but insisted that she didn't attempt to solicit the men, which I think it's pretty fucking sad that she was like so horrifically assaulted, and yet she
still had to defend herself.
Still was concerned about, because she knows how they're not going to investigate.
We're still slut shaming in 1888.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The original slut shaming.
Yeah. Well,
All right. Well,
a 19-year-old.
yeah.
Like,
And some 19-year-old shithead and his two older goof friends just like assaulted her and left her for dead.
just for walking
Yeah.
the street. So
She couldn't tell what weapon they had used on her. And when I say used on her, I don't mean they stabbed her. So yeah, take that as you will. I'm not going to really go into a description because when I was researching this, I genuinely almost fainted.
I got
like I
many
had to stop, and I started again a few days later.
yes, I got many text messages saying, I'm taking a break now. I almost passed out.
It was a lot. It was a lot. Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's the fact that she was able to get herself back to the lodging house on her own with these injuries. Think about that. That is fighting to live.
Oh,
right there.
100%. 100%.
From the timeline here, it says that she left around 1:30, or she got attacked around 1:30 and arrived back by 4 or 5.
Yeah, so she was
very...
So they either assaulted her for like a significantly long time, or they assaulted her so bad that she literally had to like drag herself back.
I
like it
imagine.
took like 4 hours or like 3 hours to drag herself back, or they spent a significant amount of time torturing her. Emma's injuries were severe, and considering this was like almost 150 years ago, there really wasn't much the doctor could do. It didn't take long for peritonitis, which is the inflammation of the tissue that lines your belly or abdomen, to set in, and then she sunk into a coma. Unfortunately, she passed away at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, April 4th, 1888, less than 48 hours after she had been attacked. But like you said, the fact that she hung on that long, she was like fighting to live.
Fighting for her life.
Yeah. And those pieces of garbage, I hope you, all three of you, or four, however fucking many of you there were, I hope you all had the worst lives ever.
Well, they got hit by a
Like, I
horse.
hope you had the most painful deaths.
Trampled by horses in the street.
I hope so. I hope you guys got trampled by horses.
Trampled
all four
by
of you.
horses.
God.
Freaking
I pray that that's
gross.
what happened to you guys.
And honestly, they said, I don't know if they were all like around 19, or what if it was like a father and son.
That's exactly what I was
Like-
thinking about. And I was thinking like, okay, so we'll get into that. But but most assume that she was attacked by one of the local gangs that preyed on the district's prostitutes. And this was pretty
Which
much
is gross. Like, come on.
yeah. So there was a lot of gangs that did that. But
people gotta work, man.
that was pretty much the conclusion that the police came to at the time. And it influenced the investigation pretty early on. Today, most people think that she was killed by the local gangs. But in my opinion, I think it's very possible that one of these sick fucks, potentially the younger one, enjoyed this attack so much that they continued to do this on their own and become Jack the Ripper.
That's what I was just
Like-
thinking about, honestly, because it's like you have every serial killer starts somewhere. They always have a first victim before they fall into their pattern of how they attack people or kill people.
Exactly. Obviously, this would mean that Jack the Ripper was either part of a gang or like some sort of group. But like we said, it could have been
very
a
well
family
could.
members, like
Yeah.
a family, like just like a dad and an uncle and a son just going being pieces of garbage.
Because back in London, like the pub was where everybody went. It was known to be like the local spot. You know how we have our local bars now.
Yeah.
So very well could have been
Just like
one
a
gang
group
to
of
just-
fucking pieces of garbage either way.
pieces of garbage.
Yeah.
That's
The
the like
that's-
gang name that we're giving them.
Yeah. The gang of garbage.
The gang of garbage.
Yeah.
The trash can boys.
Okay. So yeah, in my opinion, I think it's pretty possible that he could have either been a part of a gang or it wasn't a gang. It was just a group of drunken idiots that are just like, let's go do this.
But I mean, like, a lot of people get drunk and aren't like, hey, let's kill that woman.
It's the group mentality, man. Like, I feel like it would just take one or two of those people to convince their drunken friends to let's go do something fucking horrific.
How many times have we seen it where there's one kid that's the bad seed and then
The
everybody
bad
else
seed.
falls
Yeah,
in?
it's just like then the followers, right? Most people don't think that she was a victim of Jack the Ripper, but I think that she potentially could have. I will point out that Jack the Ripper didn't R-word any of his other victims. So again, the MO doesn't really line up. The 2 other people that he was with could have been the ones to influence the R word.
Yes.
And also, Jack the Ripper did stab his victims. And what does that represent most times? A penis? An impotent man?
Yeah.
Like, why does a man stab a woman to death?
It is definitely about sexual gratification. It's the penetration thing.
Like violating a woman in that way.
Yeah. Forcibly.
So I don't know.
Doing that.
There was like this weird misconception that because she was a prostitute that nobody really cared about her assault, but that's actually not true. It was heavily reported on, and it caused like a lot of fear in the district. She's not one of the canonical 5, but she was the first name in the file titled The Whitechapel Murder, and by the end of the year, the file would be named The Whitechapel Murders. So 4 months later, on Tuesday, August 7th, 1888, the second Whitechapel victim, Martha Tabron, is killed. Martha Tabron was born Martha White on May 10th, which actually makes her a Taurus, 1849 in South London, and she would have been 39 years old at the time of her death. Like most women in this case, Martha would often supplement her income with prostitution. And shortly before her death, Martha moved into a common lodging house at 19 George Street, which, is directly beside Emma Elizabeth Smith, unless there happens to be 2 George Streets. But I could not find a second George Street. So I assume those common lodging houses were directly beside each other, which would make sense.
Yeah.
It shows how close these people were to each other. One of the theories is that the Ripper potentially lived in one of the lodging houses, which would make sense considering...
A lot of people did back then. Right?
Yeah, a lot of people did, and they were super close.
Or
quarters.
he just knew that was where he could find women of a particular profession.
Exactly. We don't know how Martha spent what would be the last day of her life, but we do know that some point on that Monday evening, she met with fellow prostitute Marianne Connolly, also known in the district as Pearly Paul, and the 2 went drinking together. Although Pearly said that they were friends, none of Martha's friends knew anything about Pearly Paul. So kind of suspicious. She said that she knew the victim as Emma and not as Martha, but a lot of prostitutes would change their name or go by different names.
Especially since this one's saying her name Pearly.
Yeah, her name is Pearly Paul and her name is Marianne Connolly. So it makes sense that they go by different names.
But interesting that Emma is the name of choice.
Yeah,
there.
and the name before was Emma as well. I made that connection as well. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult to establish the exact timeline of the evening because at first, Pearly told the police that her and Emma went to the pub at 11 p.m. and drank in the same pub until 11:45.
That's it?
Yeah, which it wasn't that long. But later on, she told the inquest into Martha Tabron's death that they had gone out at around 10 p.m. and they went to a bunch of different pubs. Some people take this as she's lying, but I think like her memory could have just been distorted considering how much she drank that night. Could be a little hazy.
And honestly, like you're probably going to be feeling a certain type of way when they tell you, like, yeah, you're the last person that saw this person that was murdered. You're going to be like, oh my God, what did I do?
And also like
where were
she
we?
might have thought like, oh, we were only at this pub all night. And then somebody could have told her later on, oh no, we saw you.
Saw you guys.
We saw you here. And you were like, oh yeah, I went there. And because she's been drinking, right?
And that alcohol is probably like moonshine.
Yeah.
Percentage.
And I don't really think like what time they started drinking really matters. It's more like when they left the pub that's more important.
Yeah, to establish the timeline of how long the attack was. I agree with that.
But Pearly said that her and Emma, aka Martha, met 2 soldiers that night, a corporal and a private, who spent the evening buying the girls drinks. Around midnight, the 4 of them left the pub and headed off along Whitechapel High Street. When they got to George Yard, the 2 couples split up. Pearly Paul and her soldier went to the next alleyway along Angel Alley. and Martha Tabron went with her soldier into George Yard. According to the East London Advertiser, George Yard was one of the most dangerous streets in the locality.
It sounds like the whole area was pretty
rough.
Pretty shitty there.
And at the end of George Yard on the left side were apartments known as George Yard buildings. And at 11 p.m., the staircase lights to that building would be put out. And then the landings would be like in complete darkness.
That's not terrifying at all.
No. Which like could be dangerous, but was also like super ideal for prostitutes to go
I guess so.
do their business, right?
Discreet, right?
Yeah. So it's not really a stretch to think that Martha, an experienced working gal, would take her soldier there to partake.
Yes, especially since they're soldiers.
Yeah.
They probably wanted to hide a thing.
So at 1:40 a.m., Elizabeth Mahoney, who lived at 37 George Yard buildings, went out to like a local shop. And although she passed the spot where Martha's body would later be found, she didn't see anything at the time. She didn't see a body or anything. Oh. But like I said, the area was super dark. So it's very possible that she just couldn't see the body.
Because that's a big discrepancy in time. Like,
yeah.
She said they left by 11:45 and then...
She probably went off with her soldier at like 12.
Yeah.
And then...
Depending how long the walk was, right?
Yeah. And then so like what, an hour and 40 minutes she wasn't killed potentially? Like either she could have met a different person after the soldier, right? Like who's to say? Or it could have been the soldier. Who knows?
We have no way of knowing.
At around 2 a.m., about 20 minutes later, Police Constable Thomas Barrett was patrolling, and when he passed into the entrance of George Yard building, he noticed a soldier just like hanging out. And the police constable told the man that it was like time for him to get back to the barracks, like fuck off, bud. And
sir, you're making me feel uncomfortable, please leave.
Yeah, like bye. And then the soldier said that he was waiting for a friend who went with a woman into the building.
Oh.
Yeah. So the officer appeared to accept this without question and continued on his route.
That's good police work.
Yeah, right. But like, why wouldn't he just like...
wait there too, or check inside the building?
Well, like, no one's missing. There's no body found or anything. So like, I don't know. He's just like, whatever. Some soldier getting his dick wet. Sorry.
He's like, thank you for defending our country. Take one of our finest women.
Okay.
Like, no.
But to me, that does sound like the soldier who went off with Pearlie Paul was waiting at George Yard for the guy who went off with Martha.
My thing is, how would he know exactly which building they went to? Because they
no, he could have just lied. He could have just lied. I don't think you were allowed to just like fuck him both, like, right? So
you're
he's
still not allowed to do that. What?
So I feel like he's like not gonna snitch on his friends, like, oh, they're banging over there,
banging behind the trees.
But like, I mean, he could have known his friend was murdering her. And like
he could be covering that
and covering it up, or he could be covering up his friend just because he's like, I don't want to tell them that.
Well, what I mean is like, so Pearlie Paul, the worst nickname ever, she said that they went off to like Angel Street.
Alley.
Yeah, Angel Alley, and then they went off to the George Yard. So how, without cell phones in this time, how does he know precisely which building they're going to be at? Did they like tell each other?
No, he was waiting in front of. He was waiting at George Yard. So maybe they just said, we're going into George Yard. Maybe,
okay.
You know, like when when they split off, I'm assuming the corporate was like, oh, I'm going into
Angel. This is the street we're going. This is the street we're going.
Because you have to pass like George Yard to get to Angel Alley. So they...
Okay. So they probably left first and they knew.
Yeah, and then they went there, and then he went back to George Yard to wait for his buddy, who was either having intercourse or murdering, in my opinion. But who knows?
Well,
allegedly, he can't sue me because he's dead. So fuck you.
So fuck you. Like, we don't even know your name, bud.
We literally don't. I can't find it anywhere.
His name is Soldier.
Yeah, soldier and a corporate. This is probably the quote unquote corporate. Okay, but anyways, back to the story. So at I
wonder if they're dressed different. Do corporals dress differently than regular soldiers? Because like, why does it specify that?
Well, one of them had like a stripe apparently.
Oh, okay.
But we'll get into that in a few. Yeah.
That as a pickup line. I'm his boss.
Exactly, right? So at 3:30 a.m., Alfred George Crowe, who was a cab driver, who I literally looked up, and that's literally just a horse and buggy. So, like, I don't know how people call a cab back then.
You gotta get the horse over.
Do you just, like, have a bell?
You get, like, a carrot. I have no idea. I'm honestly...
So, yeah, he was a cab driver, and he was getting home to George Yard Buildings, and as he was going up the stairs, he noticed someone lying on the floor on the first floor landing. But people were often sleeping in the stairways, so he didn't really pay attention. It was pretty dark. There's a lot of homeless people around there, right? So, like, I understand.
Reminds me of that scene in, I think it's Urban Legend, where, like, the guy's roommate's sleeping in the bed, and he flicks on the lights eventually because he's yelling at his roommate. He's like, man, get up. And the guy doesn't move. Flicks on the lights, and he's been savagely murdered, and he's just like, oh, fuck.
I've never seen that. I've never seen that.
But it's like this guy, like, he gets in a fight with his roommate. He's like, can you stop? The guy's being murdered, and he has no idea about it. He's like, man, like, I'm trying to go to sleep. Flips on the lights hours later and finds that his roommate has been, like, killed right beside him.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's a
really
horrific.
See, that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. And later, when he was asked, he said he couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, or if the person was even alive or dead. So he obviously, like, paid no attention. Like, just went up to his room. Which, like, if you live in a sketchy area, like, I used to do that too.
Yeah, like, we lived downtown. We literally look straight ahead. Doesn't matter who's beside you, who's behind you, just go.
Go.
Get out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm being paranoid, but, like, I totally understand not going up to a body laying on the ground.
100%. No, why would
And it's not like
that?
they could call the cops.
Also, like, keep in mind, someone got murdered a few months ago in this general area. And we all know about it. We all know about the assault. We don't know.
But, like, nowadays, you saw that you could just go into your house and call 911.
Yeah.
What is he going to do?
He's going to
go run out in the black, in the pitch black?
Get a cab.
He is a cab.
Oh, yeah, he is the cab. Well, he can just ride his buggy to the
police station.
Who would be like, sir, we're not going to do anything.
Yeah, like, there's lots of bodies everywhere, laying, sleeping. And, like, because that's the thing, because a lot of people would accidentally die in the streets sometimes. Like,
hypothermia.
Yeah, like,
well, it's August now.
They would get too drunk. Like, you know what I mean?
Also, people used quite a lot of, like, illicit drugs as medication back then.
They used, like, lead cups.
Yeah.
And then they would get lead poisoning. If there was a body on the ground, unless there was, like, a lot of blood, people wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like,
unless it's, like, noticeably horrific, you're just like, okay.
Yeah, that sucks. But, like, something that happens, like, you're, like...
It was a different time, honestly.
The streets were disgusting, like, had fucking feces on them and stuff. People could just die of, like, you know what I mean? A cut, like...
Trampled by horses.
Yeah, like... So, I understand this guy just, like...
All right.
Bye.
I'm back on his side now.
Yeah, so anyways...
Sorry, I suspected you, cabbie.
Yeah. But at around 4:45, John Saunders Reeves left his apartment and came downstairs, where he too noticed the body. But at this point, the sun was coming up and it was getting a lot lighter, and he could see now that it was a woman lying on her back in a pool of blood. So he immediately went to go find a policeman and found Constable Barrett.
The same one that had found
that found the soldier in George Yard earlier that evening. Or morning, I guess. And Barrett sent Reeves to go get the local medic, Dr. Timothy Keelan, who pronounced her dead and confirmed that she had been murdered.
Well, no shit, Timothy.
Right? It was still pretty dark and there really wasn't much they could do. So they just brought the body almost immediately back to the mortuary.
Yeah.
Dr. Keelan performed the post-mortem at 5:30 a.m. and he estimated that she'd been dead for approximately 3 hours, placing her time of death at around 2:30 to 2:45. She was stabbed 39 times from her throat to her lower abdomen. Basically, like, her entire torso. She had a wound on her left lung, 2 wounds on her right lung, 1 on her heart, 5 wounds on her liver, 2 on her spleen, 6 on her stomach. Like,
so definitely very, very focused on the abdomen once again.
Which... we'll later get into that Jack the Ripper definitely focused on the abdomen.
Yeah.
According to him, he believed that the attacker was right-handed, and Dr. Keelan later told the inquest that the killer had used 2 different blades. Most of the wounds had been inflicted with, like, just an ordinary pocket knife, but the severe damage to her breast had been imposed by, quote-unquote, some long, strong instrument, which could have been a sword, bayonet, or dagger. So, like,
I can see someone carrying around a pocket knife, like, especially during those times, like, just to have on you.
But
to have a sword or
a
dagger.
like a dagger, maybe. I
You
guess
know what
if you're
that sounds like?
a soldier.
A soldier.
Yeah. Yeah. And he also believed that sexual intercourse had not recently occurred, thus ruling out rape as a motive for the murder. But I don't understand how that could be the case. Or, like, I don't know how stabbing somebody rolls out.
Also, did she not go off with the soldier?
Yeah.
To...
Like, he could have just, like, couldn't get hard, got angry, and...
killed her?
Yeah.
Like...
she laughed at him one time, boom, boom, boom. Like a fucking psycho.
I mean, man.
Like the original incel.
Like, that's the thing. Sexual intercourse had not recently occurred. What is recent?
Jack the Ripper literally was the original incel.
Yeah. Dude, when we get into the theories of who some of the suspects are, some of them are literally like, we just don't like this guy. And the other ones are like, he is crazy. Like,
He is nuts.
It was like, you looked at me funny.
So he thought that because there was no intercourse, that not a motive, but I think that's pretty fucking stupid.
I'm still confused about, like, does he mean recently, like, did he confirm that she was in fact with the soldier, or was that a no-go? Like, that's
like, I'm pretty sure, like, because how is he going to confirm that sex didn't recently occur? She was a prostitute. So it's like, she had no, like, vaginal, probably bruising or anything. But, so? And there was no semen in her.
There was no semen, but, like...
which means nothing. But it's also interesting because when she was found, her legs were open, suggesting that sex had recently taken place.
Honestly, I feel
so
weird about that, just because, like, if somebody wanted to stage it to look like there was a rape, they could do that, right? You can pose... It's morbid as hell, but you could pose a dead body.
Yeah.
Make it look a certain way.
Yeah. It could have definitely been posed. But if Dr. Keelan was right and the fact that intercourse hadn't taken place, I feel like the killer could have been impotent and just took it out on her. Obviously, that's pure speculation. But...
it's a good theory, honestly, because...
yeah.
There's a lot of weird stuff right now.
Yeah.
Nothing's adding up.
Yeah. The police then attempted to identify her. First, the police released a description of her to the newspapers, and the body was also photographed, and copies of the photograph were then handed out to detectives and police. They then began showing them to people in the district, hoping to identify the victim. One thing I'm going to point out that is the use of photography wasn't considered an essential investigative tool. What?
Seems...
The only time they really took pictures of the victims at all was for identification purposes, which seems traumatic to be going around showing a dead picture of a woman to all these people.
Well, I mean, back in those days, they would literally take... people couldn't afford to take lots of photographs, so they take one photograph if, like, a family member died. That's why some of those pictures, the people look hella creepy because they're dead.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, if it's when they deemed it completely necessary.
Yeah, but, like, they didn't take pictures of any of the crime scenes. Only one of the crime scenes was photographed. Did they just think, like, oh, this new technology, no one's really it's not going to take off.
It was the same thing when DNA came out. Everybody's like,
it's not going to take off.
What does DNA tell us? Literally everything.
Yeah.
Like,
a few people said that they knew her, but they all gave different names.
well, I mean, as a prostitute, I would too.
Yeah. And also, it's, like, hard to tell if they actually did know her or if it's, like, they think it's her.
They think it's somebody
like,
else.
yeah,
because
it's like,
yeah,
it's hard to tell through a pretty garbage picture of a dead body. And if you, I'm not going to post, we're not going to show them, I'm not going to post them, but if you want to go to jackripper.org and check it out, you can. But on August 9th, Marianne Connolly, aka Pearly Paul, turned up at the Commercial Street Police Station, and she informed the police about her evening out drinking with the victim and how they went off with two soldiers, again, a private and a corporal. At first, the police put, like, a lot of faith in Pearly Paul's story and asked her to attend a couple of identity parades, which were pretty much like lineups. Like,
yeah.
Right?
That sounds like a more fun name.
Yeah, identity parades, right?
Let's go.
But after she wrongly identified two innocent men, the police no longer considered her a viable witness. Apparently, the guy that she said was a corporal. He apparently was just a private with a stripe.
He could have lied.
That's
Yeah.
that's why when you said that before, I was thinking like that sounds like a pickup line to like.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a corporal. The main reason that they think she was lying is because she said that he was a corporal, and he's like, no, I'm just a private with a stripe.
Honestly, if I was like being interviewed because I visited a prostitute and then someone got murdered, I'd probably be like, no, that wasn't me. Like,
right? So
because you don't. First of all, you don't want to. You don't want them to think that you're guilty, and also you don't really want to be involved in any of that. You want to be like, oh, you're that guy.
Yeah, like exactly.
No.
They really just completely dismissed her after she quote unquote identified 2 wrong men, but.
Okay.
I couldn't find any information on why they were innocent. It doesn't say their names either.
Our poor girl, Pearly Paul, she was like, no, man, like, I was there.
I was there. I saw them.
They're like, are you sure?
Yeah, are you sure? But he like actually is not a corporal. Okay, well, he could have easily lied, but whatever.
Honestly, I think he lied.
What I read online, they were innocent men, but with no proof that they're innocent.
Well, judging by the investigation techniques of 1888,
Not gonna take their word for it, to be honest. Sorry.
I'm not gonna say I'm convinced.
Sorry, not sorry. There's a lot of debate on whether Martha Tabron was a victim of Jack the Ripper or not, but at the time, most people believe that she certainly was. But with so much time that has passed, there's really no way to be certain.
It could be, again, with the escalation, if there's, like, any differences and stuff.
Right? For the most part, Martha's injuries weren't consistent with the wounds in the later victims, who are now considered the 5 canonical victims of Jack the Ripper. But her killer had targeted Martha's throat and her lower abdomen, just as Jack the Ripper would do to his victims. So again, nothing's certain, and there is a possibility that Martha Tabron was the first victim to die at the hands of Jack the Ripper. A lot of people think that she could have been the first victim.
It could be still developing a pattern, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we don't know. And we probably never will. But
Who knows? See how this podcast goes.
Yeah, we'll see, right? We'll see how this goes. Maybe I'll crack the fucking case. Imagine. Solved.
Call up Scotland Yard.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, a lot of people are saying now there's DNA tests and stuff, and they're using DNA to rule
everywhere I see, it's like, no. Nothing is gonna hold up.
I see says no.
No. Like no. All the articles say that, like, oh, I found Jack the Ripper. The Jack the Ripper identified. But no. You have no proof.
I see that all the time, and it's like, oh, well, you're testing people's DNA.
And then I read the whole article, and then it's like, 20% chance that this is the person.
They're like, this man shares 1% DNA. We don't know if Jack the Ripper had kids. Maybe Jack the Ripper's brother had kids. We don't know.
In my opinion, the only way we're gonna really know is if we like stumble across somebody's fucking diary confession.
like I did this,
and like it's just like dated, all the details. Like I don't know.
It's like no one believes me. Honestly, of so many of these older cases, I'm like listening to the way the police like operate, and I'm just like, what? Like, but back then, they didn't have all the resources we have now.
An average person could do a better job investigating nowadays
100%.
with the tools that we have.
They would, like, bring out a dog. Not a trained police dog. They just, like, smell something. The dog's like, no.
Funny enough, they do.
No!
They did have some trained dogs, some cadaver dogs. Well, didn't really do much, but they tried.
They were there.
They brought them out to some crime scenes. They helped.
They were there, which is more that we can say for either one of us.
Fuck, I wish I knew their names. It might be somewhere in here.
The dogs'
names? There's 2 of them.
Well, we know the dogs' names, we don't know the soldiers' names.
well, the dogs aren't in hiding. That's the fucking difference.
They're dead, Rachel. It's been 100 years.
Those poor doggos. So, less than a month later, on August 31st, 1888, the first canonical 5 victim is killed, and her name is Marianne Nichols. Marianne Nichols was known as Polly Nichols by her friends and family. She was born Marianne Walker on August 26, 1845, and she would have been 43 years old at the time of her death. These women would be considered old back then.
Oh yeah. Now like my parents are 20 years older than
yeah, and they're not even considered old.
And they're not, yeah, they're doing real good.
Yeah, so it's a lot different now, right? But by early August 1888, Marianne Nicholls had made her way to the east end of London, where she moved into Wilmots, which was a female-only common lodging house located at 18 Thrall Street in Spitalfields. Here she was known to the other residents as Polly. She shared a room with 3 other women, and one of the women was an elderly lady by the name of Emily Holland, who she became good friends with.
Probably like 50.
Yeah, right? Like, that's what, when they say elderly, she's probably like 50.
It gives us a vision in our head of someone that's like in their 70s, but in reality, it was probably someone still
like
not too much older.
No, like 50, 55 probably, right? At the end of August, Mary left Wilmots and went to reside at a mixed-sex common lodging house called the White House at 56 Flower and Dean Street. She would spend the last few days of her life at the White House and would celebrate her last 43rd birthday. At around 2:30 a.m., on the morning of August 31st, 4 days after her birthday, Emily Holland was crossing Whitechapel Road, and this is where she saw Mary Nichols drunkenly staggering towards her from Brick Lane. Emily was pretty concerned with how drunk Mary was, and she tried to convince her to just come back to Wilmots with her, but Mary refused and said that she didn't have any money to go back to the lodging house, but she confidently predicted that it wouldn't be long before she'd be back. Mary headed down Whitechapel Road, and this would be the last time anyone other than her killer would see Mary Nichols alive. That was at 2:30 a.m. And then at 3:30 a.m. on August 31st, Charles Cross left his home to go to work, walking down Bucks Row.
I recognize this name. My research.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, interesting, because I haven't really thought of him as a suspect. Charles
what were
Cross.
you doing?
Charles. I'm disappointed. At 3:30, he was walking to go to work down Bucks Row. Like many areas in London, lighting in Bucks Row was pretty minimal. But as he was walking, he saw something and he couldn't quite make it out. So he got a little closer to inspect it. And as he got close, he realized that it was a woman who was either dead or drunk. While inspecting the body, he saw another man, Robert Paul, walking down Bucks Row. And Charles just called him over, to help. The men saw the woman was lying on her back. Her legs were straight out and her skirts were raised almost above her waist. Charles Cross touched her face and it was warm. But then he touched her hands and they were cold and limp. He said he thought she was dead. Robert Paul, though, placed his hand on the woman's chest and thought he felt slight movement. He thought that she was breathing, but just barely. They decided that they were late for work. So they pulled her skirt down and left and went to work.
Oh, right.
They did agree to tell the first policeman that they encountered what they found.
It's the epitome of not my job.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Pretty fucking cold. Ice cold, if you ask me. But neither man realized that the woman's throat had been slashed.
How?
So
He touched her face.
She had a scarf around her neck.
Oh.
According to the newspaper reports, her throat was cut so savagely that her head had almost been cut off. Robert Paul thought he felt slight
breathing.
He probably didn't.
There was no way.
He probably didn't. She was probably just killed. That's why she was still warm. But one of the men actually did run into a police officer on their way. But the first officer on the scene was Police Constable John Neal. And he found the body not long after the men left the scene. Dr. Lewin arrived at around 4 a.m. That's pretty quick, in my opinion. And on closer examination, he also observed that the body and legs were still warm, although her hands and wrists were cold.
That's really weird.
Yeah. According to him, she could not have been dead for more than a half an hour. So he was there at 4.
Oh,
so she was killed literally at 3:30.
Those men must have found her
Yeah, or he didn't find her, or he now that you said,
didn't find her,
you said that he's a suspect. I haven't really gotten into the suspect. Charlie, you sick. I don't know. I'm not gonna say that.
The trash bag gang.
Yeah, sorry, Charles, but you're a suspect now. I didn't even realize, but yeah, he could have easily just lied about he could have killed her.
But I mean,
nobody saw him leave at 3:30. He said he left at 3:30.
He's the first person that discovered her. Then the second guy came in. So it literally could
he
be like
just
he just finished killing her. And then was
some, oh shit.
Buddy, look what I found.
Or he could have been interrupted. And instead of...
Yeah.
He could have just played it off like, oh, I found this body, instead of, oh, I killed this fucking girl.
Which we will get into when we talk about the suspects.
But now into a couple other suspects real quick. There was a horse slaughter yard not far from where the body was found. 3 men, Harry Tompkins, James Mumford, and Charles Britton, worked throughout the night. They apparently heard nothing and knew nothing of the murder until informed of it by P.C. Thane, as he passed them when going to fetch Dr. Lewin. And then they went to view the body, and then they remained at the scene until she was moved to the mortuary. So they went and looked at the body and stayed watching the body until she was taken away.
Just like spectating?
What was the reason? What was the reason? Like, to be fair, most of these crime scenes, swarms of people were coming to like look. Oops. So I get it, but like this just seems sketchy to me that this girl was like pretty much butchered, and then a horse slaughterer yard was like feet away, and they didn't hear anything.
It's just it is weird. It's definitely weird for like they heard nothing, but they're like, you know what, we're gonna go stand there for quite a while and just like look,
observe. I don't know. And they're probably already covered in blood. So if they had any evidence on them, they'd be like, oh, just horse blood.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like sketchy
again with no
me.
DNA
and
testing.
3 men. And how many men attacked Emma Elizabeth Smith?
Yeah. There
3
we go.
men. 3 men.
Well, there's always the theory that Jack the Ripper was more than one person.
Exactly. And we will definitely get into that once we get into the night of the double murder. I don't know. That seems like a weird coincidence to me. And I don't trust them at all. I don't trust anyone that slaughters anything.
No, I mean,
like anyone whose job is something slaughter, like a butcher, it's like, okay. But a slaughterer, like, you chose that profession for a reason.
I used to know a guy that worked like slaughtering chickens, and he was like,
I actually did too.
He's like, oh, it's not that bad.
I actually did too. That's so weird that you say that. I did too. Creepy, gross.
Yeah, when he was like, the only thing that's like gross is the smell. I'm like, I think the whole thing is gross. I think the whole thing sucks.
Yeah,
Stop telling me about it.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't talk anymore. Not for that reason, for other reasons.
True.
That's one of them.
That's true. But yeah, after Dr. Lewin got there was a lot of sightseers that started showing up.
It's the same thing as like a car wreck. People are gonna like,
and they don't have TV back then. They don't have nothing. They can't go to their 6 o'clock news and hear about it.
Yeah,
like
you'd have to be there, like a town crier or whatever. Didn't they have those back then? And
like, also, kind of a fun fact. Well, not fun fact, but like that night, Emily Holland, when she was coming back and she met Mary that night,
she said she was hammered.
She said that Mary's hammered, but where Emily Holland was at the fires, because there was actually 2 fires that night at the docks, and so like swarms of people were at these docks that night. So she was coming back from watching the fires, because the fires, I guess, were put out at that point.
Yeah.
And that's when she saw Mary.
Well, it's like on Desperate Housewives. Every single time somebody gets arrested, everybody on the streets outside.
Yeah.
It's still like that today.
Yeah.
It's still like that today.
Like, if an ambulance shows up on your street, everyone's outside.
Yeah.
Like, who's that? What's going on?
Well, I mean, back in those days, they didn't really care how many people were on the crime scene because they had no DNA and anything like that. Now they separate the crowds of people from like the body and such because they don't want the crime scene contaminated.
Oh, and we'll get into that too, because like there's a few times where the police have to be like, back up, because if you get blood on you, you're a fucking suspect.
Yeah.
If you get blood on you, you're a suspect and you're coming in. So like, back up. And like,
also, why would you want to be that close to somebody that's been horrifically murdered?
Well, like, you don't, but it was so dark, so they had to go up with a candle and look at the body. And it's like, so it's like, you're getting so close, there's a good chance you might just get it on you. So yeah, Dr. Lewin got there. He was really concerned about the crowds showing up and like contaminating the body and whatnot. Yeah. So he ordered the body just be moved to the mortuary immediately so that he could just do his examination there. And there was a lot of speculation that the murder had actually been carried out somewhere else and that the body had been dumped at Bucks Row. And this was due to a couple reasons. First, nobody heard anything. Her throat being slashed so severely, but like she might not have had the opportunity to even scream or make any noise. And also there was a small amount of blood at the scene. So that's why people thought like maybe she had been dumped there. But actually like most of the blood had been absorbed into her clothes. Oh. This became pretty obvious when the police lifted her up into the ambulance and then their hands were like absolutely covered in blood. Their ambulance was pretty much just like a wooden cart. And they also noticed that the back of the woman's clothing was soaked with blood, which was most likely from the neck wound. And they also discovered congealed blood underneath her body, which was around 6 inches in diameter. So she was definitely killed at the scene. Dr. Spaulding headed to the mortuary, which was pretty much just like a brick shed. And upon inspection, he immediately noticed the neck wounds that Dr. Lewin had already took note of. But then he discovered something even more horrific, and she had actually been disemboweled.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. So underneath her bloodstained clothes ran a deep gash all the way along her abdomen.
Again with the abdomen.
Yeah. So, and this is his first canonical victim, right? So this could have definitely been escalation, because this seems like a lot for a first-time fucking murder. Spaulding immediately sent for Dr. Lewin to come back and look at the newly discovered injuries. But this is like really aggravating and this stresses me out so much. But before the medic had even arrived and could carry out more detailed inspection, 2 dumb fucks named Robert Mann and James Hatfield stripped the body and washed it down.
What? Why?
Because they're stupid. They said that they were referred to as 2 senile workers. If they're fucking senile, why are they working with dead bodies? The coroner, obviously, later criticized the police for allowing this to happen. But the police actually said that they had given clear instructions that the body not be touched until Lewin had completed his post-mortem examination. So either they just didn't listen or the police actually weren't clear. So who knows?
Why the fuck would you want to wash off a dead body?
Well, like, that's their job.
They're not when they're told not to do it.
Yeah, like, it is their job.
I'd be like, okay, I won't do it then, because I don't want to do that anyway.
But no, they could have been, like, working or been ordered to do that.
By somebody.
Or, like, the police could have just totally fucked up and said, oh, we're good. We know what's up. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows, right? But either way, Robert Mann, you are a dumb fuck, and what's your name? James Hatfield, you are also a dumb fuck. In the early days, the police appeared to have believed that the crimes were being carried out by one of the local gangs. In early September, the police like pretty much concluded that if it was one of the gangs responsible, somebody would have came forward at this point because of all the pressure by police. There was a lot more pressure on the gangs from the police for sure by that point. Yeah. So between September 1st and 4th, 1888, the police started questioning the neighborhood's prostitutes. They learned about a man named Leather Apron, and apparently this man was known to try to extort money from them by pulling out a knife and threatening to, quote-unquote, rip them apart unless they handed over whatever cash they had made during their nighttime activities. So that's when the hunt for Leather Apron began. On September 5th, 1888, the Star newspaper published a write-up on Leather Apron, which actually caused the first bits of anti-Semitism that was in this case. The Star focused on Leather Apron's Jewish heritage and pretty much like what he looked like. It was pretty scary. There were basically mobs of people searching the city for Leather Apron, and there was like a real possibility that innocent people could just fall victim to these angry mobs. It was pretty intense. And then on September 8th, 1888, the second canonical victim, Annie Chapman, is killed. Annie Chapman was born in 1841, and she had been living at Crossham's lodging house at number 35 Dorset Street. She was described as having blue eyes, dark brown, wavy hair, thick nose, and strongly built. So Timothy Donovan, the deputy keeper of the lodging house, remembered her as an inoffensive soul whose main weakness was a fondness for drink. Like a girl of my own heart.
I'm just going to point out, having to work as a prostitute during those times, I would also
have a fondness
for the drink. Plus, you still have to work. You know prostitutes are getting murdered, but you have no other way to make a living, so you have to do it.
So Annie was actually very crafty as well. So she made her money from crochet and making artificial flowers.
Oh.
Yes, bitch. We love a hustler. But like many women in the area, Annie had to supplement her income with prostitution. At some point in the month before her death, Annie got into a physical altercation with a fellow lodger, Eliza Cooper. According to Eliza, so this is just what Eliza says, and there's a lot of different back and forth on what this fight was about. But according to Eliza, she lent Annie Chapman a bar of soap that Annie had given to Ted Stanley, who was one of Annie's regular clients. And over the next couple days, Eliza kept asking for the soap back, and Annie just basically brushed her off. A few days later, the two women met at the Britannia pub on east corner of Dorset Street. And at this pub, the two women actually came to blows. And it turns out that Annie actually appeared to have gotten the worst of it, and she still had bruises when Dr. Phillips carried out her post-mortem. So poor Annie Chapman spent the last few days beaten up and in pain.
Fuck you, Eliza Cooper.
That's exactly how I feel. Like, fuck you, bitch.
Over soap.
According to Eliza, and obviously Eliza's gonna like try to make herself sound as best she can, but apparently when she would ask her for the soap, Annie would just like toss her a halfpenny and be like, go fucking get a squirt, because apparently you can get like a little squirt of soap for like a half a penny, so she'd be like, go get a squirt. At around 5 p.m. on September 7th, Amelia Palmer saw Annie on Dorset Street, and she told Amelia that she felt, quote unquote, too ill to do anything. Poor girl. But when Amelia passed Annie again, like 10 minutes later, she was attempting to cheer herself up. The last thing Annie said to Amelia was, quote unquote, "It's no use giving away. I must pull myself together and get some money, or I shall have no lodgings."
That's so
like,
sad.
She's beat up and in pain, and she's still like, well, I gotta cheer myself up and go out and make some fucking money. At 5:30 a.m. on September 8th, Elizabeth Long saw Annie Chapman talking to a man outside of 29 Hanbury Street. Elizabeth heard the man ask, "Will you?" And Annie replies, "Yes." But unfortunately, the man had his back to Elizabeth, and she couldn't really see his face. So yeah, they were talking outside of 29 Hanbury Street, and this man was just like, "Will you?" And she was like, "Yes." So
could be a job,
could be anything. We really don't know. So a couple minutes after that, Albert Kadosh, who lived at 27 Hanbury Street, walked into his backyard, and through the fence he heard voices, but the only thing that he could make out was the woman saying no and something fall against the fence. So kind of sketch. And just before 6 a.m., John Davis, an elderly man who lived at 29 Hanbury Street, opened his back door and discovered the mutilated body of Annie Chapman. God. So that was at 6 a.m. And
the prior reports were 5:30.
Yeah, exactly. So she was seen talking outside of 29 Hanbury Street at 5:30 a.m. And then like 5 minutes later, somebody hears a scream, a no. And then just before 6 a.m., so not even a full half an hour, like 20 minutes later, John Davis opened his back door and discovered her mutilated body. This was supposed to be his second murder. If he really only had 5 victims, this is his second murder. What? It just seems like you would build up to that.
Also, you're working a little too fast to be somebody that's just figuring out what your like MO is.
Yeah, what you like. You clearly know what you like.
You're going a little bit quicker.
Yeah. So 2 workmen who were walking along Hanbury Street saw John Davis running towards them. And he basically was just like begging them to come like see what he found. they went into the backyard of 29 Hambury Street and they saw for themselves the body of Annie Chapman. Her head was facing the house. Her clothes had been pulled up above her waist, exposing her stockings. The three men all ran off in different directions to find a policeman. James Kent pretty much immediately abandoned his search for a police officer and went to get a drink at the local pub to steady his nerves.
Well, I think it's like a lot of people get like adrenaline when they're like, oh, fight or flight, right? So you gotta like help this person. But other people are like,
freeze.
Fuck no. Like,
freeze. Yeah. It's you don't know how you would be in a situation like that. So like, I really don't blame James for
severity of the injuries. 100%.
Oh, if you saw something like that, I feel like you wouldn't be the same. And anyone that's like listening to this right now, if you've ever had to like witness something like horrific like that, like I'm so sorry, because that is fucking traumatic as hell, man. Totally understand him just going to get a drink. But
I don't think I'd go to the pub, but I mean,
well, where else are you gonna go?
Well, fuck.
Some of these people don't have homes. They live in a lodging house where they pay daily rent.
That's true. He doesn't have a home.
Yeah, bro, he's on his way to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Sorry, James.
Henry Holland ran up Commercial Street and headed across the Spitalfield Market, where he encountered a constable on a fixed point duty, which is basically like he's there and he's not allowed to leave, right?
Oh, so he's like a patrolman, basically.
Yeah. He doesn't have a route. Like a lot of them have a route that they patrol at a certain time, but he was just like at a fixed location. Holland was basically like, yo, I found a body, come help. And the police constable was like, nah. The constable told him it was against procedure for him to leave his post. Henry was like so livid by this officer that he actually made an official complaint to the Commercial Street police station afterwards, only to be told that the police officer did his job and he did the right thing.
Well, I mean, we don't know why he was in that particular spot.
What if he's protecting something? What if that's a high risk area? And there always has to be someone there.
Or like there was currently something happening.
Yeah, like
that they didn't want people to know about.
Because of these officers having like specific routes, or to stay at certain spots, that's the only way they can catch any criminals too.
Yeah.
I kind of get it, but it's also like infuriating.
Oh yeah, because you think you're trying to help, you just want this.
And like you've just been fucking traumatized and you're like, you go traumatize yourself too.
Yeah, you go do it now. I'm out.
You're trained for this, I'm not. Like,
which I doubt, honestly, the level of
none of these cops are trained for. None of these cops are trained for this.
I don't think anybody was. Probably the mortician was like, "What?"
Their training consisted of like taking drunk people into the drunk tank. That's what the police officers mostly did. But John Davis, on the other hand, went straight to Commercial Street police station, and he burst through the door and demanded to see a senior officer right away. By the time the Inspector Joseph Chandler arrived at the scene, there was already spectators gathered around. So yeah, Joseph Chandler, when he arrived on the scene, he basically ordered all the sightseers to evacuate the crime scene.
Oh, thank God.
And then he sent for reinforcements to hopefully contain the crowds. But at around 6:30, Dr. George Phillips, the divisional police surgeon, arrived. And at that time, the crowd at the house was several hundred people.
Jesus, in a backyard?
No, like all around. There wasn't really much that Dr. Phillips could do at the scene, so after he pronounced her dead, he ordered her to be moved to the mortuary. A little before 7 a.m., the body arrived at the mortuary gates, where Robert Mann, that dumb fuck, who stripped and washed down the body of Mary Nichols, was waiting to receive it. Inspector Chandler showed up, and he looked at Mann and made it pretty clear that nobody was to touch the corpse until Dr. Phillips had completed his post-mortem examination. Don't touch it. Don't look at it. Don't even fucking think about the body. Nothing.
Don't be alone with it.
Just fuck off, okay? You shouldn't even be here. Robert Mann's like, yeah, I'm not an idiot. So Inspector Chandler feels confident that he understands, do not touch the fucking body. Don't let anyone touch the fucking body. So, of course, he touches the fucking body. So, yeah, Chandler loses it when he finds out that within 2 hours of his departure, 2 nurses, acting on the instructions from the clerk of the workhouse guardians, had once more stripped the body and washed it before the post-mortem could be carried out. What?
How, again, if He needs to get fired. I don't give a shit.
They all do. Like, what?
Why not? How are we still doing this?
Like, what? Once the post-mortem was finally able to be performed by Dr. Phillips, he came to the conclusion that whoever the killer was grabbed Annie by the chin and then cut her throat left to right.
Oh my God. Ugh.
And when asked if she would have been able to scream out, he pointed out that her swollen face and the fact that her tongue was sticking out were both signs of suffocation. So he assumed that she had been suffocated and then her throat cut. Yes, which is why she wouldn't have been able to scream. But another thing that the post-mortem would reveal was that the killer had cleanly cut out Annie Chapman's womb, part of her vagina and bladder, and a part of the abdominal wall that included the navel. And he took it with him. Because of this, the doctor was under the assumption that the killer must have been an expert. The killer was someone who had some sort of anatomical knowledge.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of rumors, like, that they thought he was a doctor.
Yeah. But, like, anatomical knowledge could be something as simple as a butcher. A butcher knows exactly where your body parts are. They know how to cleanly cut. Like, was it, like, doctor level expert, or was it like just an expert
Plus,
on...
back then, what was the skill level?
Yeah. So on September 10th, 1888, a local businessman named George Lusk founds the Mile End Vigilante Committee, and their goal is to assist the police catching the murderer. On September 10th, 1888, Sergeant William Thick arrested John Pizer, the man known as Leather Apron. However, Pizer had alibis for the night of the two most recent murders, which ruled out him as a suspect. I have thoughts on that, but we will get into that when we get into the suspects.
Yes.
But up until this point, the killer had been known by various names, such as the Red Fiend, the Whitechapel Murderer, or Leather Apron. But soon that would change. On September 27th, 1888, a letter addressed to the boss arrives at the Central News Agency. It is signed Jack the Ripper, a name which turned this unknown murderer into one of history's most infamous serial killers. So when the letter first arrived, the news agency staff really didn't pay much attention to it, which to me was shocking. And it would actually take them 2 days before they even passed it on to the Metropolitan Police. The letter was addressed to the boss, Central News Office, London City. It read, "Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about Leather Apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fitting enough, I hope. Ha ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to police officers, just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work. Then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck, yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name, wasn't good enough to post this before I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it, no luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now, ha ha." That's so eerie and so fucking creepy.
That's a lot of information that guy gives. Like, quite a lot.
Like the Central News staff, the police initially didn't put much thought into the letter either. And they actually believed that it was a hoax. But the letter did state that he wanted to get to work right away. And when 2 more women were murdered within a day of receiving the letter, they really had no choice but to take it seriously. So this is actually where we're going to leave it for today. When we come back, we will jump right back into the night of the double murders. We really, really appreciate you guys sticking around and joining us for our very first episode. We will have part 2 out hopefully next week. Won't be too long. We will be posting updates on our Instagram page.
Keep an eye out for everything coming up on there, and we will have all of our reference images up on the Instagram as well.
Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, And don't forget to hit that notification button so you can get a notification for when part 2 is available.
See you then.